All right, we're going to stick to that religious angle and speak live in the studios with the head of the Muheria Archdiocese, Archbishop Anthony Muheria. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, too.
The onus is on you.
Yes.
Because things seem to be spiraling out of control.
There's no doubt that we need to call the country to tranquility, to sense, to a voice of reason, to a soul feel, because we are now going very visceral and very nasty exchanges. It's getting out of hand, where leadership should be really a little calmer in addressing issues. Ultimatums is not the moment now to give ultimatums. Communications that are threatening certainly will not build. We can't build any good way forward through threats, no violence, no hatred. So we are calling our leaders, let us talk. And we've had, already this week, we've given 3 various communications from the various religious leaders saying, we want peace and we want to find the solutions to the problems we have. Let's sit, let's talk. That's at least the least we can do.
Archbishop, this is probably the second time we have had you here on the show in the space of 5 months on the very same topic.
Indeed.
And, you know, the question is, how do we make it stop? Because it seems like the political class is simply not heeding your calls to peace and civility.
I think so long as we break this idea of respect, so long as this country, we, the citizens, ourselves also do not show a way of dealing with one another that's respectful, that is not led by hate. And there is too many cheerleaders around amongst the citizens. And so that's one we have to reckon with the gullibility, with the situation of our citizens who listen to this thing and catch on fire, and also the misleading of our leaders. But I also think deep down there are underlying problems that we must address. And I think we're not addressing those problems, the plight of the poor, the issue of cost of living, in an adequate way. So long as we don't address those issues, I think we're just doing a pomade over the problem. Over chicken pox, we're just applying a pomade. I think we do need to sink into more deeper discussions. And I think that's what the bishop who just talked just a short while ago was referring to. But I think leadership needs to be learned. And our leaders must go back to school in terms of leadership. We can't have leadership of insults. We've had it during the BBI. We had it during the elections we were there. We had it later on after the presidential elections. Now we are here again with the same kind of scenario. We need to hold our leaders accountable and not just follow where the cue they're telling us do. I think there is more than just citizenry. We have persons who can engage them. And the church and all the religions, the religious leaders are saying, we want to engage you. And it's not a plea. I would like to put it like that. I don't think at this moment we just want to plead with our leaders. I think they must sit with us.
Absolutely.
They must listen to the plight of Kenyans. Yeah. And they must listen to the religious leaders that are saying, we must talk respectfully, but we must talk.
Speaking of leadership, Archbishop, the age-old African saying, when 2 elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers.
Indeed.
Why can't the president and opposition leader, why can't they sit down together and talk?
I think, with all due respect to those luminaries, our president, whom we recognize, the opposition leader, long-standing leader of great repute, I think a moment reaches where the style of leadership, when it shifts from the idea of concern for the citizenry, and we are seeking expedient ways of having an agenda accomplished, and is a lifeless agenda. It is not a person, it is not individuals, we're just pushing for this. I think that's where we lose contact with the ground. I feel that leads to arrogance to the whole leadership, both ways, both the opposition and the government, where we speak to one another, at one another, but we don't speak with one another. So we abound in statements that are threatening, where we decree things but we don't listen. And when we are listening, we are preparing what to answer. And finally, I think we also have instrumentized misery and poverty. In fact, I would say many times even weaponized tragedy, where we know that something has gone wrong. We go out there with our swords to find a ground to fight our opponents, but in a vicious, inhuman way. So we need to recover our humanity. Leadership needs to be human, humane, needs to be empathetic, needs to be compassionate. That's a leader. Currently, the leader is rough. The leader is insultive. The leader is arrogant. The leader is imposing. I think we are going to a very long leadership, and that's why the religious leaders are saying, let's talk. We'll talk about what style of leadership. We talk about supporting you for your agenda, but also talk about we're one family. Even though we think differently, we can sit down. A family problem and feuds are not solved by violence, by hatred, by insults. We sit, we chat, we listen to one another, but true listening. And then we concede this place or concede the other, find a compromise. And at times we may not agree, but we don't let that build hate among us.
Absolutely.